Hello everyone and welcome to another Skymatics how-to video. And today we're going to look at the Stick and Rudder Studios xCamera add-on for X-Plane. So if you've ever wondered how to set it up, configure it, if you've ever thought that you might need a little bit more than just the default camera system that's built into X-Plane, I highly recommend sticking around and watching this video. The obvious starting point is the developer website. We need to go there to get the software. And before we continue and I'll show you how to get it, I need to mention to you there are two options available to you. You get a free version of xCamera, and then you get a paid for / donation version that you get a registration code for that will allow you to save the advanced features. All right. Most people will not need the advanced features. I thought by myself one day it would be nice to have, so I spent the money. I put a couple of bucks in there, and I'm very happy with it. And you'll see when I go through the tutorial, it's kind of neat to just have everything, man. So if you can afford it, I highly recommend that you buy into this. All right, so I presume you are on the same website now as me. We are looking at the xCamera page, and there's a whole bunch of information in here that you can read at your leisure. I'm not going to worry about it. I just want to mention to you there, it mentions about the free and registered versions. So the first thing we're going to do is basically just click on download the camera, and we're going to go to this page. It's the second page that has just popped up. Over here, you get your installation information. Again, remember, this is for X-Plane. It says X-Plane 11, works perfectly well in X-Plane 12. The new version is fully X-Plane 12 compatible. I use it, works brilliantly. But the principle remains the same. You need to put it into resources, plugins, for this plugin to work like any other X-Plane plugin. In order for us to get it, we obviously have to click the download xCamera button. For our information, there is a manual. If you are the type of person that likes reading manuals, go for it. I'm going to show a lot of it already on the video, but that's a good thing to have. And if you want to put money towards the product and you want the advanced features to be savable, you can come and register here and follow the prompts. So there we go. It's not very large in size. It's in fact, what is it, about 26 megabytes. It's rather small, but it's very powerful, guys. Trust me. So that takes care of the download. And at this point in time, you can see we got a zip file. I'm going to open the zip file, and then we're going to look at the plugins folder. Right, so that's your actual zip file that contains the xCamera. What you need to do is you need to drop this into your X-Plane resources plugins folder. As you can see, I've actually done it off camera. There it is. So this plugin serves then as a general plugin for all the aircraft, so you don't have to put it into specific other places. This is the place where you need to put it, as per the instruction that we got over there, resources plugins. All right. Once you have downloaded and installed it like this, we can then start X-Plane, and I will show you what happened there in a second. All right. Before I show you, I just want to tell you, I spawned into the Zebo mod. I made sure that my old xCamera files were not present, so it acted as a brand new aircraft installation, basically, where no xCamera exists. And what happened was I went outside and I clicked on the screen and I got this message. So it says to me there, xCamera created a new file for this plane. All right. So anyway, we're going to click on OK just to get it away. It's caught me a little bit by surprise. I wasn't expecting to see that screen come up so quickly. But anyway, we are here. We're now looking at the Zibo mod. So this is your aircraft. Doesn't matter which one it is. If we go inside, typically, this is not what I really wanted to have happen. For this demonstration purpose today, I'm going to use the Zibo mod because it's high time that I update some of the views here. And I'm inviting you along for the ride. It's going to be a bit tedious and all, but I'm just going to record everything I do, so you'll see all the different settings and everything as I go about how I build up, one little camera on top of another, and then obviously mimic the same on your side. And there's Linda, she's also ready. Right, so this is your default view when you come into your aircraft. The developer of whatever aircraft you're going to use has got some other default view. This is for the Zibo. And from here on, we need to do a couple of things. Our next step, which is the first step in the whole process since we basically come into xPlane, is now to enable xCamera for this aircraft. So under plugins, we're looking for xCamera and we're going to click on enable. As you can see, it has now come up with a notice that a new camera file was created for this plane. All right, we're going to click on OK. And if you bear with me 1 second, I'll show you. So what the plugin does is it creates an xCamera file. So in the future, if you need to transfer it between different models of the aircraft, it has to be the same aircraft, obviously. So for example, Zibo goes from the one version to the next version. There's a full new install. This is one of the files that you need to back up, obviously, because once you go to the new plane, you're going to have to either create the new set or use your backup copy, which would be this file. Just put it into position and you can start using it obviously immediately because it's the same aircraft. You cannot transfer it between this aircraft and another one that's not the same. In other words, I can't go and put it in a Boeing 747 or in an Airbus, for instance, because it's not the same aircraft. Okay, so the cameras will be in a certain position at a certain height. And obviously that's going to differ between different aircraft. Okay, so just bear that in mind. This is obviously something you need to also make a note of for backup purposes. Right, don't delete your Zibo mod when we say you have to do a full new install and, it's going to go astray and then go get lost and then you have to start all over again. So just be careful with this file. Okay. Right, so we've now enabled xCamera, and I want to start with the basic settings first, okay? What we want to do is obviously go to xCamera and then go to settings. Now, obviously, if you have different requirements, you can play with this screen here and set up different settings for yourself. For me, and my recommendation is while you are still learning how to use the product, stick to these settings. I'm going to leave it on the screen for a few seconds. You can obviously take screenshots, whatever, pause the video, and then you can have a look and copy these settings into your system. Some of it will be there by default. Some of it is stuff that I've added afterwards because it made more sense. It made it easier for me to use the product. And once you are done, all you need to do is you need to click Save Settings. This brings us to basically the third step, I guess now, and this is where we're going to start configuring cameras for ourselves. In the previous settings screen, one of the things we did enable was this little control panel at the bottom, and you literally just move your mouse to the bottom of the screen and it pops up if you copied my settings. All right, and what we are looking for is the control panel. So when we have the control panel open like this, all right, you can now start building views. And the very first view that you will see is the one that you spawned in with. This original view at the back. So what I like to do, just for my own purposes, is I just go call it ORI for original, and then I know that's the original view. I will explain the camera shortcuts, the IDs and stuff as we continue, but for now, what we want to do is we just want to set that to now. It's okay if we click on it to go back there, but we do not want to use an ID. Okay, so I'm going to tell you shortly what the IDs are about. But before we get to these IDs, we need to set up a couple of the settings here at the bottom first. Okay. So I always enable my smooth transitions. When you move between cameras, it's just advisable to have it. Then your next setting over here is your effect plugins. All right. Now I use XP Realistic, so that will govern in this specific camera how my head is going to move, how the aircraft's going to shake, rattle, and roll. Okay. And because it is configurable or savable, usable per camera view, it's very handy to have. For instance, if you are in a turbulent situation, you're busy flying and you're trying to reprogram your FMC or switch a radio frequency, then you don't want to be shaken all over the world. You would ideally like to have that camera view not have any head shaking. Okay, and for that purpose, they've given us the ability to switch it on per camera. So when we do the FMC camera, you'll see I'm going to switch it off because I don't want that. All right. I'm not a big fan and user of all these extra, more advanced stuff. I'm sure you'll find guys that will teach you a little bit more in depth. I just want you guys functional and get this thing going for you. So let's read through the basics and just enable basics. But we don't want to enable the auto advance. External cameras are nice to have, but you can play with them yourselves. I've got different ideas of what the cameras are that I want to use. I'm not worried about that. Right, we don't want to track the pitch. Right. Initial zoom level, that's all fine. Then these two things, enable temporary positioning and retain mouse look position, for me are two things that I generally switch on. Right. The decision to use a level camera or not is yours. It's definitely going to be up to you. Some cameras or some views, it might be beneficial, some it might not be. So I'm not going to enable it right now. Then the next one, let's see. I don't think we need anything much to the top here. At the bottom, we're going to definitely enable the force field of view. Right, and the reason you want to enable that is when you zoom with your mouse, it will remember the direction that you were looking, but not the zoom level. So your anchor point might be now a meter behind you or 30 centimeters behind you, and it's going to save at the anchor point. You can't set the anchor point for the camera with these mouse zooms and things, the little wheel on the mouse. Okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to manipulate your field of view by enabling the setting, and then you're going to set your anchor point where you want it to be. Okay. And we're going to obviously move this for different views as we continue. Okay. Now, one of the things that sometimes catches even me still every now and then is I don't have a backup copy, and I sometimes look in the wrong direction and I click save all cameras and I lose that view, and then I have to go and find the view and set it up again. Okay, so I highly recommend to create a backup when you click save all cameras. Right, so over here it then tells us that in the resources plugin camera, etc., in our profile, there is now a backup. Okay, so if you have to revert back, it's easier to go find that and install it than to have to sit sometimes for 10 minutes again and reset up your camera that you've just messed up. So it's one of those things. Sometimes the camera is easier to just set up, but it gives you an option at least. Okay. Then the other thing that you will find useful, depending on the camera that you're setting up, is your movement increments. Okay. Sometimes you want to do it very finely. You don't want big increments. Sometimes you just want to leap to the next place, so there are options. I'm going to leave it at medium for now. It's reasonable. So this is basic settings. As you learn more and as you want to change things, you can obviously come and change these settings. But for now, we're just going to click on Save All Cameras. Okay, it's telling us about the backup again. All right, and that brings us to the section where we can start creating our own views. Now, to create our first camera, we have to decide, are we going to add a new category or are we going to add a new camera? In my case, I would click on camera and I would say add a new camera to the end. You can right click on it and then you can actually just use your normal Windows skills and you can go call it a name. I like to call it Pilot Eyes. Right. Now, at this time, if you already have ID set up, you can start linking it, but I'm going to show you a little while later how we set up the IDs and then we'll link them all together. Okay. So Pilot Eyes for now is where we are sitting, and I'm just thinking what's the best place to put this thing. What we want to do now, we can't lose this thing. So what we want to do is we want to find where we want our pilot eyes to be. All right. So during normal flying operations, I would say that's kind of a grand place to have it. Right. So what we're going to do is make sure we're still on the camera we want to save, and then we're just going to click save. All right. Now, what's going to happen is if we click on the pilot view, you'll see it goes back to where it was, and this one will go to where we preset this view. Okay. One of the nice things that I can't really show you now is if you click on those two little, squares, little window thingies, squares, you can actually undock this window and put it on the outside. And so for guys with multiple screens like me, it's really nice. Then it doesn't interfere with your view. You just move it out of the way and you work on the separate screen with it. But for the tutorial purposes, obviously I can't because you want to see what I'm doing. So that's just a quick FYI. So my next tip, and this is very important, okay, is for you to create a new camera. There's two ways of doing it. You can either click camera and add a new camera and start from here, okay? And then you basically move your head, put it where you want to be, or you can move your head wherever you want to be now, like so. And then we can simply say, add a new camera at the end. It automatically assumes this position for the camera, and we can then go and call that, let's say, first officer. EYE. Yes. Helps if you spell correctly. And enter. Okay. So now we've got the first couple of views already. So there's the original, first officer, and our own eyes. Right. Now for this alignment, I think we must just set our yokes on. All right. So now we can go back to the FO eyes, we completely out. See, now we can use our arrows on our keyboard to actually go put us into the correct position where we think we want to be. Okay, Linda's a little bit in the way. Sorry, Linda. We need to move it maybe like that, something like that. Once you are in position, you can then click Save All Cameras. And now the alignment is better. Something like that, right? Okay. And this is where the movements come in. If your movements are too large, you will not be able to put the camera exactly where you want it to be. And sometimes, like I said, you're going to have to make it small to get the finer position of where you want it to be. Now, I've mentioned to you, we can move left and right with the arrows. We can also move up and down with the arrows. Okay, so this is all done from the keyboard. Okay, you can also use this facility over here, and you can move your camera into position. I just find it so much easier just to use the arrows on the keyboard. Okay, it's the standalone arrows, by the way, not the one on the numpad. This is the standalone arrows on my keyboard. All right, for you to move forwards and backwards, you're going to use the field of view. Okay, so we'll get to that. I'm going to show you eventually when we get to the next camera. We're definitely going to use that. Okay, because that is where you set your anchor point. Remember that, guys. So while we're speaking of it, let's do it a little different now as well. We're going to create a camera, add a new camera. We're going to call this one overhead. Overhead. And now that we've created it, we just need to make sure that we are on it. So it's highlighted. Because now we need to move where we want to be. Like that. We're going to look up our overhead. Now this is where the field of view is going to come in. You see, we can put it like this. This is why I wish I could just put it on the other screen, because it's kind of interfering with my eye levels. Okay. For our purposes, let's do it this way. I have to pull it a little bit more. All right, and obviously you're going to have to use your eyes a little bit just to make it sit where you don't necessarily perceive that it's skewed. Right, level and straight. There we go. All right, so this is what we want, and now we can say save all cameras. All right, so now by simply clicking on the views, we can go back to the view that we saved. All right, for my purposes, I'm going to increase this a little bit, because when we do the streaming, I need to make provision for my banners. Hopefully that's enough. I can always set it on the fly, so that's not a problem. So we've saved it. And go back to our pilot eyes. The next camera that I'm going to add is going to be my FMC. Right. So again, we're going to use the facilities given to us. All right, now, when we are in a view like this, we don't have the up and down facility, and there's a bit of a trick to it now. Because we are more horizontal than vertical, the up and down arrows don't do what you think it should do anymore. whilst the left and right still works, what we need to look as is the greater as or smaller than little arrows on the keys. On my keyboard, I share it with the full stop and with a comma. So the one will make you zoom in and the other one will make you zoom out again. This is now also going to create an anchor point, but without setting the point of the field of view. I beg your pardon. Okay, so you can zoom in and get your new anchor point without changing the field of view. Okay, you will learn as you continue when to use what, setting and how to manipulate it. Okay, so don't let it bother you too much right now. The one thing that I do want to get rid of right now, first before we continue, is just the yoke. It's kind of in my way now. So now we can go back. We have to select the FMC. Remember, that is the one we're manipulating, so it has to be highlighted. Okay. And then we can go and zoom. Oh, move the camera viewpoint to where we want it to be. Again, I need to remember I'm going to do some streaming and stuff, so to make provision for everything. Right, it has to be big enough that it is useful and readable and obviously broadcastable, right? That should give us enough room for all the banners, I'm sure. Just go a little bit more in. Again, this is something I can change on the fly. But for now, that seems reasonable. We are on the FMC. It's highlighted and we can click save. That's it. Okay. Right. So because this thing keeps on bringing that other backup thing up, I'm just going to disable it for now. Remember, it's a lifeline. I'm going to forfeit it for myself right now just to make it run smoother. But I highly recommend, while you're still learning how it works, create your backup so you can revert back in case you make a mistake. Because if you, spend 5 minutes on setting up the pilot eyes and you are now very happy, this is where I want it to be, and you go and overwrite it, you're going to not be very happy with yourself. So just bear that in mind. But for my purposes, I'm just going to skip it right now. Let's just close this quickly. Oh, HUD. Okay, I've got tricks for the HUD as well, so we can do that later on. Let's just do the basics first. Kind of happy with this view actually. Right, so after number 4 comes number 5. Now what I usually do is, now I'm going to use this greater as and smaller than buttons again, because I want an anchor point, okay? So what I'm going to do is just move slightly up, get a better angle, and then maybe a bit too much. See, all depends on your own preferences, really. But I want to be able to have a view where I can step through on the ND when I've got my flight plan set. Well, that should be enough for all my different banners at the top and the bottom, right? Something like that. Okay. So what we want to do is move to the bottom, go grab the control panel, or we go to the plugins xCamera and just get the control panel up. Now, this is exactly the trap that you can come into. If I click save all cameras now, I'm overwriting pilot eyes. I'm going to lose it. Okay. And this is why the backups are so important. Okay. But because I realized that I can't use pilot eyes for this view, it's meant for something else. I go to camera, add a new camera. So this camera has now assumed the position we are in, and I can just go and rename it. I'm just going to call it plan. Enter. Okay. So if I go between them now, it remembers my views now, like this. Easy as. And now I can click next page, previous page, the step button, and I've got a reasonable view of the ND. You know, the only time I'm going to have to look up is just to change the view or the zoom level, but you know, that takes care of my plan view. So that's number 5. All right, so let's go back to pilot eyes and let's do it the more sensible way. We're going to click on camera. We're going to say, make a new one, and we're going to call this one pedestal. Pedestal, right? So for the pedestal, what we're going to do is we are going to kind of get it like this now. Kind of center it. We use the mouse arrows to get it semi in the middle of the screen. All right, and now we have 2 things that we can do. We can either change the field of view, or we can simply use the greater as, smaller than buttons to actually zoom in. All right, something like this. Hope we've got enough room for the banners again. And that should give us a pretty nice view of our radios and everything. And at this point in time, because pedestal is highlighted, I can click on Save All Cameras. How's that? That's really nice. All right. So, in terms of our cockpit, we just quickly close this now. Just see pilot eyes is highlighted, and Save All Cameras just to make sure we are in the right view, very importantly. So if we look at the seat, we've got the pilot seat, we've got the first officer seat, FMC, plan view, pedestal. The only thing we don't have is literally for the actual throttle quadrant pedestal area. I'm not too worried about that because obviously we are going to be in this position and zoom in if we really want to see anything there. Okay. If you want to make a view for yourself, you're more than welcome. We've got the overhead, obviously. One of the quick ways of getting to our cameras, obviously, now is through this little toolbar at the bottom, right? So you don't have to have buttons assigned or IDs assigned. You can literally click here as well. I kind of like my keys. I just prefer having keys. But that's one way of doing it. So that takes care of that. Now, in order for us to assign keys, I think that's the next thing that we need to talk about, because we're going to add a lot more cameras, okay? But in order for us to add shortcut keys, we have to use a process now in Explain itself. So I'm going to quickly talk you through that, and then we'll return to creating more cameras and testing them with those IDs and stuff. Okay, to create the IDs, what we need to do is we need to go into our settings, into the keyboard settings, and type in camera. Okay. Now, this is our xCamera facilities, and we're going to scroll down. I've already made some. In fact, all my cameras have been preset. So I'm going to show you what I did and talk you through that quickly and give you some understanding. Okay. So in xCamera, what I do is I use my numpad and the numbers and the buttons on the numpad. All right. And I go up to ID of 15. Right. So I can have 15 cameras literally at the press of a button close to me. All right. And I start off with select the camera with a view ID of 1. That's numpad 1. 10 will be 0. 11 is my full stop next to the 0. Then we've got 12, 13, 14, and 15, which, is your forward slash, the asterisk, the minus, and the plus. Right? For ID number 2, we're going to use 2. For ID number 3, we use number 3. 4 is 4. 5 is 5, and then 6, 7, 8, and 9 is 6, 7, 8, and 9. Right. So by doing this, you will notice that by choosing these buttons, it's going to tell you and explain that they're already used for something else. We don't care. I don't know of anybody, I've never seen or heard of anybody using those shortcuts. I'm pretty sure there must be guys out there. If you are one of them, I apologize. But this just makes sense for me. Okay, so this is how I set it up. You don't need anything more than that. You're just going to assign all your numbers to the appropriate values, and you're going to click on done. Once that is done, we're now going to come back to our xCamera control panel, and we can start assigning those numbers. So for pilot eyes, that's number 1. For the first officer, we're going to use number 2. For the overhead, we're going to use number 3. For the FMC, 4, and so on. All right, so again, we need to now just make sure that we are in the view we want to be. In our case, I just use pilot eyes always, make sure that it's highlighted, right? And then we're going to click on Save All Cameras. So what happens now is if I go to my numpad keys and I start pressing, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Right, and that's a quick way of getting to your cameras. Now, let's quickly look at the views where we do not want shaking. All right, so let's go to the FMC. And in the FMC, we're going to set the effect plugin to none. And we're going to save it. All right, that's one place we don't want it. Then we can go to number 6. We don't want it on the pedestal. If I need to set a radio frequency or something, I really don't want to try for half an hour circling through all kinds of bad weather to try and do it. So it goes off and we say save. Overhead, that's much of a muchness. You can switch it on and off where you want to or not. I'm kind of happy with this. The overhead, I'm not too worried about. You don't mess about with it. And in fact, you know what? Let's do it this way. I'm actually thinking, in terms of the overhead, you usually sit in this chair and then you look there. So that will have shaking. But if we go to the actual overhead, maybe it's beneficial not to have it. Yeah. Let's do it that way. And then save all cameras. Right. There you go. Now, in order for you to have a quick reset of your view, I've seen it many times on different streams and videos of guys that don't really center their view before they land. But what I did was on my alpha yoke, on the big red button, number 2 over there. On number 2, where's number 2? There we have it at the bottom. There at the bottom. I just set my camera with a view ID of 1. So if I press number 1 on the keyboard or if I press the red button, we're getting the same effect. So I can be in any view and at the press of the joystick button, I can be back, or I could press number 1. And there you go. The view is centered perfectly correct for landing. Now, I want to quickly get some ground power on here. I want to get the HUD going because that's another thing that you can make a shortcut for. So I've got the HUD on H. All right. I'm not sure if we need to align Or if it's just a question of time, we must just take our time to wait for that to come on. Imagine. Oh, there we go. There it's on. Okay, so one of the things that you'll immediately see is it's kind of off. It's not in, your display is not in the correct place. Okay. So what we can do now is we can just kind of move like this. Okay, so we're still in a reasonable position to do our landing. It's not exactly where we had the previous view, but at least we are centered with the hub now. HUD, sorry. And what we can then do is just go and save this one. So we're going to go to camera and we're going to say add a new camera. It's at the end there. And we're going to call that HUD view. Enter, and I'm going to use number 10 because that's 0, right? So 0 and 1 is right next to each other. So now we need to be careful. That HUD view is highlighted. It is where it is, and we can say save. Right, so now we can go like this. This HUD view is actually not that bad. Where's that? Is this thing? Let's go here. It's not a bad view, actually. That might as well just be the main view as well. You know that? You know what? Okay. See, this is where personal preferences come in. I kind of like this view. I must be honest. I think I made a mistake with that view. This is a better view. Do you think this is a better view? Okay. So, let me show you this then. Let's do this. Let's go to the control panel. We go to pilot eyes. Right, that's on one. We can say no. So pilot eyes, we're going to delete. We go to HUD view. And we're going to now say add a new camera. Right? So it's assumed the position. We're going to now call this one pilot eyes. And okay. Then we're just going to click and drag it up again. Okay, so that's pilot eyes. We can reassign it to number 1. And save the camera. So now we basically have 0 and 1 in the exact same position with me, which means that we can actually get rid of one of them. Where am I going? So HUD view actually has no reason to exist anymore. We can actually get rid of it. Right, so there's pilot eyes. All cameras. There you go. So now we should be okay. All right. Seems to work. Okay. Yeah. I'll leave the exact position where you put it up to you. This for me is good enough at this time. Right. Okay. So that takes care of a few basics. I've shown you how to delete the camera, how to make a new one, how to assume the position. It's always, going to, when you create a new camera, it's going to assume the position where you are at, right at that point. I've shown you how to click, drag, and drop. Then you can organize your sequences. I've shown you how to create your IDs in xPlane, then link them to the actual IDs in xCamera. And I must say, I'm pretty pleased with what I've done here today. So the next the big question is, how do we do the rest of the cameras in the cabin? And then we can also talk about the flybys and the orbits, and we're going to do that just now. We just want to open our control panel again. All right, as you can see, I'm using a registered version. What I'm about to show you is not going to affect the free version at all. We're just going to create a new category, call it cabin, and then put the cabin cameras in there. But as far as I know, when we go to the orbits and the flybys, those are additional ones. And I'm not sure which of these settings might be, but you'll find out pretty soon. So without wasting any more time, let's create a new category, and we're going to right click on it and quickly rename this one, and we're going to call it cabin. Right. So already camera 1 has assumed the position of pilot eyes, but we're going to change it. Now it's up to you whether you want XP Realistic or whatever shaker program you have to take it. What I'm going to do is just again down a little bit. Now with your arrows and with your greater as and smaller than little buttons, you can obviously now go and move around in the cabin. You can actually use the mouse to navigate, help you navigate a little bit. But as you can see, it's rather slow. Okay, so there are a couple of things that we can do. I want to quickly get not too much height, but just something reasonable. So why don't we stand over here? Then we and make a view for the front door, right? So we are now in the position where we want to save. We are on the camera we want to save. So we're just going to say save all cameras. Let's rename this one left front door. Okay, so when we click on left front door, it's going to bring us here. We have the option to then look that way or look that way, because we are here. Okay, now if you have the facilities to create more buttons and assignments, by all means do it. I'm going to skip this one. I'm not going to link this one, and you'll see why later on. Okay. So that takes care of that camera. I think XP Realistic should be on. It's in the cabin. We're going to feel it when we fly, right? Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly show you something else. In our settings, camera settings, right, you'll see here the different speeds, okay? And the way to access the different speeds to make the view change faster is to press and hold the shift button, okay? So you can see here, that's without the shift. Look, without the shift, look how slow it is. Now I'm going to press the shift and look how fast it is. So basically it elevates you one level. All right. So from medium, we are now jumping to large, and this allows us to move quickly, much quicker through the cabin. All right. Now, what I like to do, I like to find a seat somewhere where I can see the engines, for instance, right? Might have gone a little bit too far. So now, yeah, this is a nice place, right? So all we need to do again with our greater as and smaller than buttons, we're going to move forwards, backwards. We're going to use the arrows, and we're going to use the mouse to tilt ourselves basically into a position where we really want to be. So I personally think this is a great place to be. We can't actually see the reversers. I don't think the hydraulics and stuff is on, obviously, so that's not going to show us. Just stow it. Okay. But I think this is a great kind of a camera view to have. And I mean, obviously you can, when you come and sit here, you can use your mouse and you can, manipulate left, right, up, down, whatever. Okay. So I like this view. I think this is a cool view. To move just a little bit out of the way, just to see. Yeah. Why not? Why not? Right, so what we're going to do is click on camera, create a new camera so that it assumes this position for us immediately. Then we're going to say something like left engine front. Okay, now for me and the way I operate, I already know that there is a specific key that I want to bind. I just can't remember which one exactly it is. So I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to say it's 13. All right. I'm just going to save it, and then I'm going to press the button and see. Perfect. That is number 13. All right. So if I press the button that I assigned for ID 13, according to that explain keyboard setup, I will come to this view. Okay, now what we're going to do is the opposite. Now, that poor lady is now not going to be very happy, but try not to upset her too much. We're going to sit on her lap right now. And tell my wife, sorry lady, I'm going to pretend you're not there. Right, now we're just going to do exactly the same as what we did on the opposite side. Pick our view, pick our zoom. I think that's about nice. We're going to create a new camera. And we're going to call this right engine front. Okay, and this should be 14, I think. Need to find out. Yes, it is. Okay, that takes care of that. Now, what I like to do is I like to go and set myself up behind the wing as well. I'm holding in the shift button just to make it move slightly faster. And now add a little bit to keep more parallel. Sorry, people. I'm so sorry. Okay, I don't want to sit on another person's lap again. Not now. We're going to go find the view that makes us happy. Like that. How's that? That's not a bad view. Right, you guys must be careful. If you go too far forward, you're literally going through the barrier in explain between the internal and external sounds. And you could be in for a nice surprise when you come to this view all of a sudden when that engine is running and doing its thing, right? So, here we go. Let's save this. All right, so we need to click on camera, add new camera. Right wing behind. Okay, and this is going to be ID 9. Yeah, I've got a pre-configured set I've been using for a long time, so I've got a really good idea what I want. So we go. That's number 9. Set. Ooh. Yeah, good. There's nobody sitting there. Let's go that side. Sorry, sir. It's all for a good cause. So something like that. I like to keep a little bit of the sides of the windows there just to make it kind of feel a bit more real. And then we're going to say camera, add a new camera, right click and edit this away. This is now left wing behind. And this will be 7. All right. So that's 7, that's 9. And what about 8? I'm going to show you shortly what we do about 8. Those are the payware cameras as far as I know. I'll show you just now. All right. I really like these views, man. Okay. Right, now for the more exciting views that we discussed earlier, the orbits and the flybys. And we need to obviously go and get our control panel again. But while we are here, I just want to quickly show you the controls if you use buttons. All right, so over here you've got your cabin. And if we click on cabin, it's going to move over. You'll see there we have the cabin views. If we go to cockpit, there we have the cockpit views, and that is basically the extended version, it seems, of all the last couple of views that we used, it seems. I'm not entirely sure, but I mean, you can see it's a mixture. It's not just one single, either cockpit or cabin, so it seems that that's like a summary. But then if you click on the actual heading of cockpit, there's the cockpit ones, there's the cabin ones. So you'll learn it as you continue. But anyway, we said we wanted to get to the control panel and look at those other views. Okay, so let's start playing with them a little bit. We're going to go to category and we're going to do a flyby. Why not? Let us do a flyby. Let's call this flyby. Okay. Now, at this point in time, standing the way we do, it means that the attack heading of the camera is going to be over one of our wings. All right, so I highly recommend to set this to like 180 degrees because that means the camera is going to come from our nose. Okay, we're going to attack from the nose end. Right, and I'm just going to leave it by default just to show you guys immediately what it does. Okay, so there's a couple of things you need to understand. There's the nose. We're going to come at the nose. Okay, but the camera itself, the flyby, will not run unless you tick this box, allow the camera auto advance. Okay, so before we do that, I want to assign a button to it. Now that is going to be, as far as I know, button 12, if I recall correctly. Let's save it and let's test it. I'm going to go, yes, it's button 12 for me. Okay. Now, in order for the animation to start, to do the flyby, we need to allow the camera to auto advance. And there you can see, there it's running. So we can now click on save again. And we're happy. And now we have a pretty decent flyby. It looks much better than the default flyby, eh? Okay, the reason it goes underneath the ground is very simple. That's the way we set it up. So let's go and edit it. Let's look at create a flyby. We're going to keep the name. If you keep the name the same, it will overwrite what you have. If you give it a new name, it's going to literally create a pen, create another camera for you. So over here, obviously, you've got distance that you can set, the initial height. So it's going to start 25 meters above the aircraft. And if you look at the way it's been set up, it's going to start to descend and basically go under the aircraft. This is obviously meant for in the air. So in the air, you're not going to, go underground and so on. But you can play with these figures, okay? The one I usually play with is just the duration. I make it a bit longer or shorter or whatever, but you're free to play with it. I'm going to leave it as is. I'm quite happy with it. So the next thing we want to do is we want to create an orbit. Right, now I usually create like 3 orbits. And the nice thing about xCamera is you can actually assign multiple IDs to a certain set of, or type set of cameras. So we're going to make 3 different orbits. We're going to connect them both to key number 8. Okay, so we're going to call this orbit 35 because it's 35 meters radius from the aircraft. So your radius, we're going to make 35, right? Then the minimum and maximum height, the camera will obviously go up and down if you do that during the orbit, okay? So what I now do is I just go set it at 5 meters on both sides. So the camera will literally remain at a height of 5 meters above the aircraft in the entire orbit. All right, then I usually make the 60 seconds. All right, it's just better on my eyes. It's a nice experience. Right. Now, initially, it will turn clockwise. If you put the rotation in the reverse, it will go anti-clockwise. So it's up to you which one you want to use. We want it to be continuous, and I like to use the level camera for this one. Okay, so we're going to create it. Now, because we've already clicked on this allow camera auto advance, it's a problem. We need to take it off and just go back. To assign in an orbit the correct shortcut key, you need to choose the top one. Okay, and this is why you need to stop the rotation. You need to take that off. Go to the top one. I'm going to assign key number 8. I'm going to save it, and then I'm going to allow the auto advance again, and there you go. There is your orbit. So the moment I press the 8 key, it's just going to start over again, and there it goes. All right, so we are at 35 meters from the center point, and this is our rotation happening now. I'll let it go through a bit of an orbit, and then we can do the next one. The reason I do 3 is I do one at 35 meters, I do one at 45 meters. Those are the ones I usually typically use on the ground. You can obviously use it in the air as well. But they have got the steady camera at the steady height in the orbit. When I do the 55 meter one, I like to have a bit of an up and down, and that's typically the one I use for effect in the streams when I feel like it, okay? And then the camera will actually go underneath the aircraft at certain points and above the aircraft at certain points. You can see the movement happening. And in that one, I typically don't use the level camera, okay? When it creates a bit of nausea, I can change it, because if you are in a turn and this thing goes kind of weird, you'll see when you play with it. Sometimes it looks funny. All right, so that takes care of that orbit. Let's create another orbit. So we're going to go orbit. This time we're going to go to 45. I'm going to pull the distance to 40. Oh, it's very sensitive. 45 meters. I'm going to do exactly the same. Because I gave it a new name, it's going to append. Now it's going to add a camera. So we click on that one, remove the tick to just stop the movement. Let's go back to 0. I'm going to choose number 8 again, and I'll show you the effect in the simulator as well. So there's now 2 assigned, it's going to complain. Okay, just warn you. We say it's fine. We don't care. Right, so we're going to click on allow the auto advance. Now what happens is when I press the 8 button, I've got both of them on 8, so that's option number 1, and that's option number 2. So I don't have to go and press Shift 8 or Control 8 or any other fancy number to get to my second option for an orbit. It's right there. Right, and you can see it's now obviously at 45 meter radius. We don't have to wait the whole orbit for that one. We can actually just take the tick off now already, and then we go to create an orbit again. This one we're going to say 55 meters. That's 55 meters, and then what we can do is we can, that was fast. You can obviously set it to where you want it to be. I'm going to just for the first initial one, just put it at plus 15 and minus 15, just to get the feel for it. And say create. Do that one. We're going to choose number 8 again. Save all cameras. And then obviously allow. I'll just save it again. Right, so now you can see it's kind of got this up and down effect. I'll let this one go for a full orbit again. And again, we have the same situation. If I press 8 the first time, it's going to go to the shallow orbit. 8 again, the medium orbit, and 8 again, it comes to this one. And you'll see we're going to go underground just now. You know, and like I say, for those guys who are sensitive, you know, to motion sickness and stuff, you can decide how you want to set it or use it, you know, to make you happy. So when you're flying and you combine this, it kind of makes for a nice display. It really does. You'll see the camera will lift now again. There we come back up, see, and then it rises again. So if we want to edit it, we go to category, we say create an orbit, we leave the name the same, and we can now take the level camera off, which is why I'm coming back here, and we can then go experiment with it sometime in the air. I'm not going to fly with you guys now, this is not part of the tutorial, but you know, just showing you some options. So if we say create, it's literally now just overwritten that one because we used the same name. When I go stationary, click save, make sure it's fine, then close it, press 8. That's our first orbit. Our second orbit, that's why. What happened to the other one? Why did it not save like that? Or did it lose it because I now overwrote it? Let's quickly go back. Let's see, orbit 55, switch off. Maybe I didn't connect it. I did not connect it. I'm pretty sure I did. Okay, my bad. I did something wrong somewhere. I don't know. So let's try it. Number 8. That's the first one. Second one. And there's the third one. I just pressed the button number 8 the whole time. And there you go, guys. That is how easy it is to do xCamera. As you can see at the time of this video, it is obviously time consuming, but nothing in life that's worthwhile comes easy, eh? Or just for free or just quickly. So hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you're going to have some fun creating your own cameras from now on. It looks funny. Funny under the ground like that. But anyway, we know why it does that, so we're okay. Good. Well, that's it for me and the Zebo mod. Let's do a nice flyby again, and I'll bid you farewell until the next time. I hope you guys are going to have fun, whatever you do. Thanks for watching.